Welcome to Value Through Vulnerability. This is a podcast dedicated to putting the human back into humanity, and we are boosted by Humans First. And I'm grateful to be joined by two awesome humans today, one being Humans First founder Mike Bacanti, and the other being Dr. Giles P Croft. Let me just introduce you to Giles before he tells you a bit more about himself. So Giles is a psychology graduate and former NHS surgeon who stepped aside from clinical practice for a decade to explore a number of career paths, including health informatics, cycling journalism, public speaking, and a high street retail with his wife. That is an eclectic mix, Giles. We need to explore that. He's now back in the healing profession, tackling the root cause of chronic mental stress and its many harmful effects by helping clients reconnect to their natural, inbuilt state of health. He lives and works in the Brecon Beacons National Park with his wife and his 6-year-old daughter. So welcome to the podcast, Giles. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me. Hi, Mike. Hi, Gary.
Very nice to see you.
Just so good to have you on here, Giles. And I've first of all got to put a shout out to our friend Helen Amery. I think it's Helen how we came across one another some months ago. But let's get a little bit more about you for our listeners who've kindly joined us today. So that's a really eclectic, I can't get away from that eclectic mix of experiences that you've had. So just tell us a bit more about you. You know, how have you come to where you are today? But you've only got about 4 minutes. So I'm sure you can wrap that in.
Right. Shall I do it in one breath? Well, I guess I've just sort of followed my nose as the years have gone by. Really, it's just been a case of. I mean, I had a fairly sort of standard education and went off to medical school. You know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Really enjoyed it, loved it, and then kind of got to a big old crossroads after I'd got my surgical qualifications, and really I think slowed down enough for the first time to really ask that question. You know, is it? You know, is this the right thing for me? Because it's very much it's a very, very vocational career, and you get hoodwinked into thinking you're making career decisions, but really you're just really tinkering around in the minutiae of one medical specialty against another medical specialty. And I was surrounded by people who had a lot of my mates weren't medics, and they weren't doing night shifts and they weren't working weekends, and they seemed quite happy. And I was like, hang on a minute, there's a different world out there, isn't there? So and it was just, I don't know, it was just being present to the opportunities around me, and just following my nose about what I really liked. And at the time, I was like a junior registrar in orthopedic surgery, and the way that we managed the information was absolutely terrible, and I really felt like I could actually contribute more to the health service by sort of taking a step back from the one-on-one care and actually going into the health informatics side of things. And I somehow managed it, even though it's not really there's no sort of career path into that or anything. And then that kind of got me really interested in the whole idea of career change and kind of getting what you want and stuff like that. And I was a really keen cyclist, and I started sort of really pushing it, just taking opportunities and just badgering people, really. And then the next thing I know, I'm working for my favorite cycling magazine. It's like, what? How does that work? So I really, then I really started looking into psychology and stuff, and the years went by, and then a couple of years ago, I was still doing my health informatics work. By this time, it was kind of like self-employed, but it wasn't really. It felt like I'd kind of wrung that dry, and I felt like it was time to move on. So I started I started coaching, and then it was in kind of exploring the kind of coaching that I wanted to do, that I sort of fell down a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of the whole human experience thing. And it's like, oh, and it was great because the realizations that I had about us being human and how we experience the world and everything, kind of like really, for me, sort of were the last, well, not the last bits because I'm always learning, but some really, really big pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that I didn't have. And when I looked back, it kind of made sense of everything that I've been doing for the last 10 years in speaking about career change and stuff. So it's been a fascinating process. And I mean, I've got no idea where I'm going to end up next, but I just still sort of committed to that, showing up, following my nose, doing what I like, and reacting to the opportunities when they come up. So yeah, was that 4 minutes?
Yes, that's pretty much 4 minutes, I'd say, Giles. But do you know what I love already, though? It's just this, your energy and your just curiosity just to be okay with following your nose. Like it just feels counter to so much of what we're taught as we go through education, as we go into the world of work. And it's just beautiful to experience, to watch you just navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd caught me back when I was leaving surgery, no, it would have been a very different Giles. That one was brute force, utter terror, because I had no, I'm giving the impression here that I know what I'm doing, so I don't. But like back then, that first one they say, don't they? What's the Stephen Covey quote? The most difficult bit about going to the moon is leaving the Earth. Overcoming the initial inertia, and that was very much the case for me. Once I'd done it, because it was just one of those things you're not supposed to be able to do. You're not supposed to be able to leave medicine at I was at registrar level, and I don't know what we imagine happens to people, but yeah, falling down holes or living in a van down by the river or something. And when it became apparent that you could actually do something that you liked, and it did actually turn out all right, that was when I sort of started to relax into it a little bit more.
Yeah, that separation tension is really, really an interesting piece to go down, because I imagine in coaching now, you find people in that position, not as abrupt or as big of a leap as you took. I mean, from the medical profession into, what you chose to do next. But there's so much tension in that, and I know the work you do in stress, you can just see where that is absolutely present in many of those even smaller transitions.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And Gary, what's striking me a little bit, and Giles, is we hear, in the past so often, if you change jobs frequently in your career, someone may look at you and say, oh my gosh, you're a job hopper. You're no longer qualified to do work in our company because you appear unstable. Something must be wrong. And what I really love about what Giles embodies right now is, job hopping is for underachievers, right? You've shifted careers several times. You put job shoppers to shame.
I can't comment on jobs because I've not had one for so long, but I should have put myself in do not disturb. But yeah, it's for years I was convinced there was something wrong with me. I looked around, and people seemed to they'd stay in these careers, and they especially medicine. But even then, after that, because when I first left, I thought, oh well, that career is not for me. Therefore, I need to find the right one. And then after I've been doing that for a few years, the kind of the discontent set in. And what I didn't realise was that I was, innocently enough, I was looking to the outside to make me feel happy. I was looking for the perfect career. I was trying to create what I imagined, and it was only imagination, what I imagined were the right conditions for happiness. And that's made up, and it doesn't work like that. So funnily enough, it never came true. So I moved from thing to thing, and I think if you get stuck in that, then yeah, it is easy to really beat yourself up about You know, I mean, I've read books about, you know, no, it's your right to change your mind if you want to, and to, you know, try and feel better about how I thought I was. Whereas now, yeah, I just see that you know, that really is a symptom of misunderstanding how experience works, in that, you know, we think that it's the career that's going to make us happy when it's not.
Giles, do you feel that's innate in people, or do you feel that it's taught over time? So now that, you know, you're at this point and you're helping people, you know, understand what those conditions are, or internally where you need to be in that state of happiness. Um, and so that belief of I can create the right conditions or find myself in the right career or around the right group of people, and then I'll be happy. It's an outside thing.
Mm.
Is that an innate journey from the psychological side, or is that something that we learn a pattern and then believe it to be true?
Yeah, I think very much the latter. I think, I mean, it's hard to say. We've got no control group of babies who came into the world and have had no conditioning whatsoever. So we're never going to know, are we? But it certainly looks like, the way that the world is set up. You know, it's a very outside in world. It's a very, you know, the message is absolutely everywhere, isn't it? I mean, even in the conversations that we have with each other, if you meet with somebody and you say, oh, how you doing? And they go, oh, I'm not feeling too great today. You know, the first natural question that comes out of our mouth is, why? What's happened? And it's like, that's not true. There's actually a disconnection between what's happened and how we're feeling, but we're innocently going around reinforcing it all the time. And everything that we see on the TV and the films, and that, so, you know, we're kind of immersed in it from childhood. So there's it's no surprise that we end up the way that we do. For me, the beauty is that it's almost like this journey that we can go on, and, you know, we come into the world as pure consciousness, if you like, you know, without any of the conditioning, just in a state of being, and that never goes away. And it's just, you know, we can, all of us have got the capacity to see through that illusion, to fall out of all that conditioning, and to have moments of pure being where, you know, it's like there is nowhere to get to, that it's we have got it all the time because we've always had it all the time.
That pure consciousness and the pure being, just that just jumped out at me. Along with the patterns, and we don't know if we'll ever see, you know, a group of, like a control group that you said, that haven't had those patterns put together. And, you know, I think about my daughter, who's a kindergarten teacher, and as COVID hit, and all of a sudden we have, you know, I said, Jenna, this will be the first group of kindergartners ever to graduate without being able to form a straight line. So maybe there's hope that they won't have that type of conditioning.
Giles, I'd love to ask, like, part of the introduction I gave you to this conversation today was that you help people tackle chronic mental stress, as it were. What are the origins of that in your experience, or how, you know, what do you believe? Again, it's not a cause correlation. However it looked, but like there's a lot of perceived stress right now in the world, you know, whether people look at, you know, pandemic, whether they look at the Black Lives conversation, there's a lot of awareness raising right now, whatever that means to individuals. I'm just wondering what can someone listening to us right now that might be feeling stress and going, God, I'm really hoping for some sort of magic bullet from Giles today. But there may not be a magic bullet, but where could you point them towards? What do you ask? What do you invite them to maybe look at or think about to help them sort of delayer whatever might be going on?
Well, I mean, in my work, there's, you know, there are kind of like, I suppose there's steps that you go through, and there's a few kind of like basic facts about our psychology, I suppose, or the way that we experience the world. And for me, the first one that you come to is that life is only ever happening now. Like there is nothing else but the present moment. You know, when we hear a lot of talk about, oh, I should be more present and I should, you know, I should practice mindfulness. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, there literally is nothing else but now. Like it's never happening anywhere else. And so all the thoughts that we have about the future, that's happening now in thought. And all of the experience that all the feelings that come about when we're thinking about the past, about the stuff that's happened to us, maybe that's happening now. And all of our ideas about who we are and how we are and what we're like, that's also happening right now. And all of it's happening in thought. And I mean, this is why there have been books written about the present moment and books written about now, because in any given moment that arrives, if we slow down enough and we slow down to the present moment, then we can see that we're okay, that we're alive, that we're breathing, that we're okay. And it's when our thinking takes us out of that present moment that we feel the stress, because we start putting our feelings onto something else. I'm stressed because of what's going on somewhere. Well, no, you're stressed because of your thinking around what's going on somewhere that's happening right now. And in 5 minutes time, when you're eating your breakfast, or your daughter's yelling, or something else is happening, and you're like, squirrel, and your consciousness is taken elsewhere, in a very real sense, that ceases to be. That's, you know, it's no longer in your consciousness. And it, you know, it sounds a bit mechanical, and it can sound a bit, sometimes when I'm talking about this, it sounds a bit kind of like, not standoffish isn't the right word, but it can look a little bit like denial. It can look a little bit like denial, but you just can't get away from the reality that every single one of us is experiencing life in this present moment, and we're experiencing it in thought. So if we're feeling stress, if we slow down back to actually now, we'll see that we're okay, and we see stress for the I mean, it's a bit provocative, but we see stress for the illusion that it is.
It's so profound, because I've had my, as you know, I've had my own experience a couple of years ago where I slowed down enough to realize that I overthought my way into a burnout over 6 months. It wasn't, I used to think it was the fact I challenged X, or I said so-and-so to Y, or Z told me X. I attached so much meaning. And then I just sat there literally in the middle of a 3-day retreat and just went, oh my God, it's my thinking. I just layered up over 6 months and went bang. And it was a real release, like the freedom that came in that moment of going, I don't need to hold on to those stories anymore. It was really fascinating. I'll never forget it. But again, it's because I slowed down enough for that, just that story to be able to just go. And it just literally like taking a backpack off. It's really weird.
It's funny, because we think of life as being really fast paced, but it's not. Life isn't fast paced. Our mental activity is fast paced. That's where, you know, if there's a feeling of life being fast, that's because there's a thought is taking the form of life being fast right now. Life continues at the same pace as it's always continued, which is just one present moment after another.
Mike,
Mike's on a mind wander.
Yeah, I am. Well, and so, and it's the benefit of starting this at 5 a.m. this morning for me, right? So normally I get up, I do a little reading, and then I spend time in meditation. And I did a little reading, but I did not get into the meditation. I came into this conversation, and there is that fresh mind. There hasn't been any other outside input into my day or my thinking. And so it was really easy for me in this moment to go there with you and really hear what you were sharing with us. And what was so interesting to me were the dichotomy of that was hitting, or the paradox was how I might miss the depth and the beauty of what you just shared had I been later in my day, where there was other influences, that things had ramped up around me and I was in other thoughts about what's Thursday, what's next, how did this morning go, kind of thing. And all of a sudden I'm caught outside of the moment. But sitting here, my first interaction in the day, really my first thinking for the day, it really landed. And I think what's interesting, what you shared, Giles, is when we can slow down. So I started in this place that is slow. This is the first moments of the day. I'm here. How would that change? And so it was such a great set point. That's why my mind was wandering, but it's also, being able to kind of receive that gift that you just shared with all of us. It hit. So it was good. It went. It landed on me. So thank you.
You're welcome. So it's easy though, isn't it? Don't you think? Here's a question: Is it to think that slowing down has to be something where we're kind of like in a physically quiet space and in a like a receptive mood to it? Because don't we also achieve that sense of presence when we're at our busiest?
Indeed. The 11th hour, getting a mound of work done because you're totally into it, kind of thing, up against the deadline, the sharpness that can come into play, where we can accomplish, many hours of diligent work in a short period of time. That's really a great point. Or even the presence of being on a hike and hearing each bird or noise from inside the woods as we're stomping up the mountain, and understanding the pressure of our upward climb. So hearing the steps on the ground being different going up than down. I mean, imagine all of those moments are, akin to that presence.
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of walking with my daughter. We live on the edge of a national park, so we'll be walking through the most glorious woodland, and she'll be talking about the TV she's going to watch when she gets home or something. And it's just like, just put her gently back. I'm like, mate, you're missing life. Like, it's happening right now, this minute. Okay, you need to slow down and actually appreciate life as it's happening, because all of us, we I started a course a while ago, and we were just like, one of the things that we were asked to do was just take note today of how every time, just like mark it down or mentally mark it, how many times you find yourself living in the future, of thinking about something that's going to happen. And when we were given that instruction, I thought, oh man, this is nothing new. I know all this stuff, and I'm, probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 times today it will happen. And within the next 30 minutes, there were about 10. And we live our lives in the future. We live our lives in a fiction. I mean, it's a fiction. It's made up. There's nothing real about it. And all the while, we're just on autopilot, missing what's actually going on around us.
Can I check something in here, Mike? I've got to, because I still work in corporate myself, and I've got to go down this little rabbit hole, you Giles. So this is more for my amusement. I might be completely off on a wander myself here. But like the whole planning, like organizations can spend 4 months of human beings' lives planning what the next year needs to look like.
Yeah.
what would you say to those organizations in terms of potential to maybe unleash more of those human beings? Like, is it like, do you see planning as valuable, or do you see it as like completely like,
Yeah,
is
no, totally. I mean, if I, you know, if I want to have cereal for breakfast and there's no cereal in the house, I have to plan to go to the shops and buy cereal. You know, it's like there's nothing wrong with planning.
Mhm.
It's just for us as individuals, I suppose there's a difference between taking an action in a present moment with a, you know, with intent, if you like, held ever so lightly, because we can't control the future, so you know, it's a best guess, and really ruminating on stuff, and really, you know, really spending a lot of time literally living our lives at a different time to life is actually going on. Very, very easy to do that. Very easy on a corporate level. I don't know. I've not worked in corporate, so I can. But yeah, you know, it absolutely makes sense. It absolutely makes sense to plan, but there's just I mean, is there a difference between like organizational planning and individual planning? It's like you can come together as an organization and you can all be present in a meeting together, and you can all listen, and something beautiful can come out of that in terms of a plan, and then that's in place, and you disband, and you know, you get on with your day. Don't see anything wrong with that.
I love that so much, Giles, and I'm going to just give it more context for our kind listeners today. So mine's henchional little throw the ball to see where you sort of batted it off is that I know people in organizations, and even my own one on occasion in the past, it's my since I've had a little bit of a consciousness shift around some of this, is if you need to hypothetically show your investors and shareholders you're going to grow 10% in 2021, is it worth spending, open question for our listeners and for us, is it worth spending 4 months of this year guessing what we may or may not get, or is it better just to tell the investors what they need and try and hope that you hit it moment by moment by moment as you go into the next year? Like, do you know what I mean? So it's a really interesting sort of interplay. So yeah, we don't need to answer it today. It's just that was my thinking that was going on, is actually that. I don't know, Mike, maybe you have a comment as someone that's been in corporate.
Yeah, you know, I did a lot came to mind, Gary, because I think that what you just hit on is a great opportunity for companies to make this shift to focus on the experience their people are having now and let them achieve in that moment, because planning is about the objectives ahead. So if I'm going to go out into the wilderness, I want to have the supplies that I need that can be packed in a certain bag, right? And so there's some planning that goes to that. What's the weight of that? Do I have enough food? You know, do I have provisions? And so there's a plan for the journey. And from a corporate standpoint, and we did a lot of this, right? And I've been in those sessions for a long time, you know, with large P&L responsibility, a lot of people on the teams. The planning of the business side is not a 4-month process. We've turned it into that. Where we're going to go from the business is a bunch of data points and then an idea of what markets they can come out of. And that can be done in about a week. It can be done in about a week. And if there's, you know, ancillary groups and everything else, a week for, say, each group, each team. And the information is there. So you set the journey, right? You set the course. Then if we use the rest of the time to shift to, let everybody that's going to go along that journey understand what it is, why it is, internalize it, come to believe in it, commit to it, and then they can be present in the moment to achieve those things, because it becomes internal, it makes sense, They're not resisting it. They understand it.
Mm.
The aptitude or the propensity to hit those targets increases because the people understand it and believe they're prepared to go along that journey. That's what's been missed through the whole industrial era. It's what's necessary now. And I love that you brought that up. And, you know, as I look at both of you, you know, with Dr. Giles helping people be present for that journey and having you shave off all those unnecessary layers of planning and measure and proficiency and righteousness and intelligence that we pretend to have in all those plans, and the way we force and orchestrate people to, you know, behave. It's like, and then we jump on the horse and we start whipping it, and we never question, will the horse run without whipping it? It's, you know, we were just taught to, you know, now get on your people and ride them because we have a journey to go on. And there's just so much magic in making that shift. So I know that was really long on the corporate side, but I'm, you know, with that question, Gary, and then, you know, the gift that Giles just shared with us this morning, I just have some real clarity around
it, I mean, it's interesting bringing it into a kind of like a corporate organizational perspective, because for me, like my plans, my life plans, the more I've had plans, the less well it's turned out. And I've always been kind of like had that sort of, well, wouldn't it be cool if kind of mentality to things. And yeah, it's really good to have a direction to go in. It's good to have something. It's good to be inspired by something that creates that sort of tension in the elastic that you know, that pulls you forward. But I think the more we specify what that needs to look like, and the more tightly we hold on to it, that's when we get into difficulty. Because, for instance, the whole Cycling magazine thing, that just completely happened by magic. I mean, it was my favorite cycling magazine. I got a bee in my bonnet one day. I'd been reading it for ages, and these guys who were sent off to ride their bikes in the mountains and wonderful photography and everything. And I was like, oh, I'd love to do that. And I used to go on holiday on my bike. And so one year when I went away to the French Alps, I thought, oh, I'm going to do a Tour de France stage. I'm going to do the biggest stage of the Tour de France, and I'm going to add on an extra mountain. Let's see if I can do that. So I did this absolutely crazy ride, and I was on my bike for 16 hours, and I think I did something like 6,000 meters of climbing. And as I was going along, I just got like people at the side of the road every now and again to just take photos, and I was taking photos when I came back. I thought, I'm going to submit that as an article to my favorite cycling magazine, and it took ages to get it published, ages and ages and ages. I think there were three different. They were going through a period of the editors changing, and I got it accepted 3 times, and then the editor moved on. I had to go through the whole process again. Now that was kind of like a, wouldn't it be cool if I could get an article that was all I had my mind on. Now, when it came to, so then when the article was being published and they wanted the photos, they said, send them in on a disc. This was pre-cloud. This was quite a long time ago. And I didn't live all that far from the publishers. So I thought, oh, I'll hand deliver the images. I didn't know why. Not with a purpose, not with a plan or anything. It's just like, oh, I'm going to hand deliver them. I'm going to see if I can meet anyone there. And so I did that, and I got there, and it was like this faceless corporate building, and there was like a barrier and everything. I was like, oh, that's not going to happen, is it? So anyway, I handed over and I said, can I hand these to the art editor, please? They're for this chap. And she said, oh, I'll take them. I was like, well, I've come all this way. Can I hand them over personally? So he came down, and he was as confused as I was as to why I was handing him this disc. And then I heard myself saying, can I come and have a look at the offices where you work? And he was like, well, it's just like an open plan office. Why would you want to do that? I don't know, just humour me. So we went upstairs, and he was showing me all the offices and all the different magazines. And then there was an office. There was one office with a door open and a chap sat inside. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, that's the editor. And I said, oh, can I have a word with him? And he was like, oh, are you free? So the next thing I know, I'm sat next to the editor of my favourite cycling magazine. And he said, oh, I really like that article, and it was really good. And then we sort of went quiet, and he said, so you're a junior doctor? Yeah. What on earth are you doing sitting in my office? and I said, well, I don't really know. And I said, but you must be used to dealing with doctors, because you've got a chap who writes you like your medical Q&A. People send in questions which always end with, this has happened, when can I get back on my bike, basically. And I said, so, you're used to dealing with doctors, aren't you? Because you've got this chap who does your answers. And he said, well, we did, but he stopped doing it. And we're on the lookout for someone else. And I just smiled, and I was like, would you like me to have a go? And he said, well, aren't you an orthopedic surgeon? I said, oh, just humour me. Let's give it a go. I'll send me a couple and I'll send you some answers and you can see what you think. And that was it. And then I was on the books. And then every time I would say, I'd go through back issues, and I'd phone up the editor and I'd say, you've not done an article on the Giro de Lombardy in Italy for a while. I think you should do an article. How about I go to Italy and I ride the route of the Giro de Lombardy? And you don't need to send a photographer. I'll get my girlfriend to do the photos. And that was it. And I did that for 5 years, and it was like an absolute dream come true. None of it was planned. None of it was planned. That was having a passion and having a direction and being pulled in that direction, and then just being open to the opportunities as they arose and just saying yes to stuff.
Yeah, I know someone else that says yes a lot.
Saying yes. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. That's such a fun journey. And it speaks to the real possibilities that are available, as you said, being open.
Yeah.
And what strikes me through all of that is how many different seeming barriers that you bumped into along the way in that one day, in that getting to the office and sitting with the editor. Mm. And fear never entered the question, because you weren't thinking about some different outcome. You were just there. There was really nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, I literally had nothing to lose. I had nothing to lose. It was just, and when I'm working with clients and we are, working on career change stuff, it's that's I think seeing that our experience, seeing that the felt experience of life that we're having in any given moment is coming from thought, that's why it's so liberating. That's why it's so powerful. Because if you're in a situation like that and you're feeling nervous, it's like, well, the nerves aren't really telling you about what's going to happen in 5 minutes or anything. The nerves are telling you you've got nervous thinking right now, and that's fine. That's nothing. You can just be with that and open your mouth and say what needs to be said anyway. Listen to the intuitive voice inside instead of listening to the chattery noise in your head.
I look at the clock and go, Giles, we need to do another 12 of these. Just for anybody that's listening, I'm going to be completely open. We call this value through vulnerability. We had no idea where we were going today. We don't prep these conversations at the best of times, but I'd say even less so with Giles. So what you've heard today, the experience that we're having is literally in the moment. And I just think there's something really beautiful in that. What if we all approached people that didn't look like us, people that were a different shade skin, someone that has a different background that really is completely different to us, and just went, hello, what's your experience of life the last 24 hours? It'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? It's a bit of a thought experiment for people, just to really, back to your word intentional, Giles. Oh, you don't look like me. What's your experience the last 24 hours? Could be interesting. I do that quite a lot, by the way. So that's why I'm recommending it. It's really valuable.
Yeah,
It's really
I've certainly noticed. Like I used to be a parent. We lived very close to school, and I used to be a parent who I was quite kind of closed down when I was all in my head about stuff. I was quite closed down, and I never really felt like I had anything I wanted to share with people, or I wasn't very chit chatty. I'm not really all that chit chatty now, but I used to turn up at school like literally 2 minutes after the bell had gone, because I knew I could time it to like get in through the gate, get my daughter, and get out without having to speak to anybody. It was that bad. Whereas now, I'll like saunter down 5 minutes before, and I'll just be like, I'll just start talking to the first person I stand next to. It's liberating. It's liberating. It really is.
Interactions as inconvenience. Isn't that instead of an opportunity? Isn't that a choice? You change your mind about that. Powerful. What's available in choices, you've just described so brilliantly this morning. Thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me on.
I'm going to have a great day.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, every Tuesday morning then, is it at 5? Is it a date?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I think Giles just got his first client in Minnesota.
Yeah. I'll send my invoice in the post.
Oh, it's amazing. But look, we do need to start to wrap up. But Giles, it's been a beautiful exploration, as we knew it would be. What sort of, again, we're in the moment. I think people are taking that away. What invitations? Like I say, we don't want to make recommendations, but I'm just wondering, how can someone play about with this today? What we've been discussing, is there something you'd invite them to think about, or maybe just play with? You gave one example earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I just there's the whole like seeing that we are that there is nothing else but the present, I suppose. And then that question that you can ask of yourself at any time in any situation is, where do I think my feelings are coming from right now? That's a really powerful one. Where do I think my feelings are coming from right now? Because if the answer that comes back to you is anywhere but thought, then it's not true. It's not, because it's just like, it's not possible. We perceive the world indirectly. Life isn't happening to us. Life is happening through us.
Cool. That's a little bit of what a profound ending. I love that.
I'm full of them.
I'm going to wrap that. That's almost prophetic. So I'm going to leave that right there, Giles. How can people find you? And do let us know, is there any sort of courses that you're running at the moment? How can people sort of, what's the best?
I do regular what I call Wellbeing Wednesdays, which are streamed online every other Wednesday. It started out in my wife's shop, and then lockdown happened, so I sort of moved it quickly over to streaming. But people can come in on the live stream. I'll send you a link that people can register for that. And I've got a YouTube channel with a playlist with all of the replays on there, and some clips from there that are sort of tackling specific applications, if you like, of this understanding. So yeah, I'll send you the links for that.
Please do, and I'll make sure that all your contact details, Twitter, LinkedIn, are all in the show notes. And Giles, Dr. Giles P Croft, thank you for joining us. And Mike, enjoy the rest of your day, Mike. I think I think it's going to be a fun one for you.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you, Mike. And nice
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Have a great day all. Take care.
See ya.